board meeting today, she said there were 1,000 people watching with her, but they voted to be closed next week.
Okay.
What?
Okay, it is 6 o'clock.
423-95-54.
So I'll call the meeting to order. First item, I would let everyone know that all board members are present, although Mr. Quirin or Dr. Quirin is coming in as a Zoom. Welcome, Dr. Quirin. Good to have you with us. First item on the agenda would be adoption of the agenda. I believe we have an amendment to add some personnel.
We have 3 recommendations for an employment to add to the agenda this evening. Brittany Odom, high school girls assistant basketball coach, effective the 2021 season. Cato Bar-Miller, high school assistant wrestling coach, effective this season. And Ryan Willis, middle school boys assistant basketball coach, effective the 2021 season. So we want to add those to the agenda.
Anything else anyone has to add? If not, accept a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I so moved.
Motion by Olivia.
Second.
Second by Joanne. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Carried 7-0. Next item is 3.0, approval of October 19, 2020 minutes.
Move to approve.
Motion by Joanne.
Second.
Second by David. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. 4.0 is consideration of bills and warrants. If you had the opportunity to look at those.
Hold on a second. There's
Yes, sir.
Were any purchases made with Spark money?
With Spark
I
money.
know I circled something.
The initial amount of Spark money was a reimbursement, and so we had gone through those. I'm not sure if that went through this time.
All right, it was on page 8, the bottom 4 or 5 or 6 of the HVAC bills. Is that Spark money or is that just coming out of
Is it
our?
on page 8 in the packet or page 8
On
in the
the
bills and warrants?
finances, on the list of warrants.
Okay, let me get right back there and look and see.
Page 3 of the warrants, page 8 of the
Okay,
packet.
that was what I thank you.
Yes, sir. I wasn't finding that.
I wasn't either. Okay, and so when we look, the HVAC work, no, that was not paid with Spark. That was not used, that was not Spark money.
Okay, so did you get a report as to the air quality?
From Greenbush. Yes, we did that prior to school starting, and that was where they had told us to open the return air vents. And
You're gonna have to speak louder, I really
Okay,
can't hear you.
that was where they told us to open the return air vents so that we would have, enough air
So
cycling.
is that
And we had more.
prior to or after this HVAC repair?
I do not know. And this also could be, I'd have to go back and check. This could be there was a power outage
Okay,
the last couple weeks ago that resulted in some work having to be done to some of the HVAC. And this could be regular maintenance. This could be a variety of things. I'd have to check and get back with you. I don't have that information right here with me.
all right, well, it's like $7,000 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buildings.
Right, looks like the tech building, VOTech, middle school, high school, and district-wide. Okay, so I can check on that,
All right,
and add that to your view.
Accept a motion to approve the bills and warrants as presented.
So moved.
Motion by David.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. 5.0 is hearing of requests and suggestions from citizens. No one is out there. So we'll move to 6.0, which is a report by the superintendent.
All right, here we go. Let's look. We had parent-teacher conferences last week, and we did that virtually, which we had never done before. I think it was pretty successful for the most part. They were able to zoom in on their device just by clicking a link in Google Classroom, or they were able to visit with the teacher on the telephone if they preferred to do that. So the numbers really looked pretty good. At Lincoln, in the high 90s, Garfield 93, Guthridge 100% at one grade level and 93. So middle school and high school, those numbers are included in the report. The middle school did it a little differently. They had a tiered approach. So if a student had a D or an F, then the teacher contacted them. And so they had 88% participation. Now that wasn't necessarily 88% of all the families at the middle school, but how many conferences they had scheduled and how many they had. So, but I'm not sure how many actual different families that was. The high school, it was about 27%, 30% of the families that they met with. So, and those numbers typically go down as you move up into the secondary world. So in your stack today, you got all of the surveys, the feedback surveys. So we collected feedback from all the staff, parents, and then students in grades 4 through 12 on how the first quarter went of school, how they felt, things were going, things that they felt like they had what they needed to be successful, were they safe, all of those things. So all of this is going to be put out on our websites, so parents will be able to look and see, oh, okay, here's what the feedback was for Garfield and for, the district. So overall, I felt like people know that we're working hard and doing good work. So.
So I have a question.
Sure.
There's a lot of paperwork here. Is there any, it looks pretty good, but just coming to the board meeting, I don't have a chance to read this right now. Is there a way to get these to us earlier?
And this was not something that we printed off and put in your packet. This was just something for me to share, and we can discuss it at the next board meeting if it's a topic that you'd like to discuss. I just felt like it was, I want for you to have the opportunity to review it and for people to know that it'll be out there. But these were a variety of people's, whether it be patrons, students, staff, or parents. These were simply their perspectives and their feelings.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and put it on for next
We can sure do
month,
that.
and then we'll, if we have questions.
If it's something that you guys want to talk about.
Well, I'd like to know what the feedback's all about, what the parents are saying, what some of the issues are, what can we improve on, what have we done well on.
Right, and that's all. That's
You know,
all.
and some of the
in there.
administrators' input on that, so I agree with Joanne.
Okay, we can sure add that to next month. The administrators have looked at each of their surveys and have visited with staff about things that went really well and things that they need to work on and focus on. So that has been done in the building, but we can talk about it at the board meeting next time if you'd like. I'm gonna write myself a little note. Okay, so we've talked about conferences, surveys. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was the quarantining process and the procedures. So up until last week, we hadn't had a tremendous amount of students that had been required to quarantine. We'd had some, but I wanted just to make sure everyone understood, here's how it works. So if there's a positive student or staff member, what happens is the health department calls the school and says, so-and-so is positive or tested positive. And we say, okay. And then what we do is we pull that student's schedule, their classroom schedule. We do that first. And then we get the classroom schedule, we talk to the teachers, we pull the seating charts, and then we measure, like literally measure. What is 6 feet? So here's the desk, and talk to the teacher who was within, because it works out, it has to be 6 feet for 10 minutes or more. We do the same thing on the bus with transportation. Now, the health department, they're the ones that tell us how far back we have to go to trace. So if a kid doesn't have any symptoms but tests positive on Thursday, we're required to go back. Who was he in contact with on Wednesday and Tuesday? You've got to go back 48 hours. Now, if the kid kind of felt cruddy on Friday but didn't test until the next Monday, well, since they kind of felt cruddy on Friday, you've got to go back the 48 hours from when they first showed symptoms. So then we're going to look at who did they see on that Friday and that Thursday, and that Wednesday. So the health department is the one that gives us the dates in which to start that contact trace. So once we've run the schedules, talked to the teacher, got the seating charts, we check attendance because sometimes those kids weren't in school. Other kids that may be around in that area. Then we call all the parents of students who would be considered a close contact. Administration makes contact with each of them and lets them know, okay, here's what's happened. We're going to turn your information into the county health department. And that information is the student name, the parent name, address, and the best phone number. And now our health department is working really hard. They really are. They're doing a good job. There's been so many lately in the county, positives, that the contact tracing for school or for work, those kinds of contacts, is now being handled by KDH&E in Topeka. So our health department puts in our information and sends it to KDH&E, and then our families get a call with a 785 area code from Topeka giving them the dates. And the health department is the one that will tell them, and KDH&E will say, this is when your quarantine starts, and this is when you're released to go back to school. And then they'll send them a letter. So we keep track of those letters so that we know what dates kids can come back to school. Okay, so I had a parent today that was really, really upset with me because she thought her child should get to come back today. And I didn't have that anywhere, and I called the health department, and they were able to look it up in their system with KDH&E, and they're not released. She can't come back until the 18th. So that isn't a decision that the school makes. That's a decision that the health department makes based on that 14 days since exposure. Are there any questions? And then after that, I send an email out to everyone and all staff in that building, just letting them know that there's been a positive case, and you guys are blind carbon copied on that each time. And then, of course, the nurses know. So those numbers, we have seen the quarantine numbers go up since Halloween. Maybe that's a result of Halloween, and maybe I think, we may see another surge after Thanksgiving and another after Christmas. But so this sheet right here, that's blue and gray, this has the number of students that are currently quarantined and the percentage. We've kept that since the beginning of the year, just so that we would have an idea. And so you can see that those numbers in the elementary school have gone up, and the numbers quarantined at the middle school and high school. Now, that does not mean positive. These are not positive cases.
Right.
These are students that were a close contact. Now, in that number of students quarantined would be today, there are 7 students district-wide that have tested positive. 7. Now, 3 of those students will be released tomorrow, which means we're down to 4. Today, there's 1,306 kids enrolled, attending in the district. That's a 0.3%. So those 7 kids are included, wherever they may fall, elementary, middle school, high school, in those quarantined numbers.
Any possible reason why the middle school is double of the percentage of students that are quarantined compared to the high school and elementary school?
Yes, the idea was to do the cohort groups, which was a great plan because those students are all together all day long. But what has happened, it would appear, that when they've gone from class to class, they haven't sat by the same person. And so they're with people, the same people all day long, but they may have sat next to 5 different people in this class, and 4 of them might be within 6 feet. And then we go here. And so starting tomorrow, what they're going to do is sit in alphabetical order in each class. And then that way, I do think that's going to reduce the number of kids that would be required to quarantine based on an exposure, if they're sitting next to the same person, and part of it too is luck of the draw. It seemed like we had a couple that they sat in the middle of the classroom. And that just makes for more contacts from every angle this time. So
Well,
that,
Looks like, aren't the elementary kids kind of scattered too, and they meet up with other kids, just like the middle school does?
well, elementary kids are in one classroom all day long. And so they're sitting in the same seat next to them all day
So
long.
they're always in the same seat?
At the elementary rooms, because they're in the same classroom.
At the elementary level, what up the numbers was the bus.
Yeah.
Because you put a kid on the bus and they set two to a seat, so you have to go 2 seats back, 2 seats front, and then 1 to the side, and then 1 behind and 1 front is all 6 feet, so.
Right. That's what got-
One elementary kid, 9 kids got quarantined from the bus.
From the bus,
Or 1 student.
right.
Okay.
So
But
that
in the
is,
classroom, I think there was 2 or 3 only
Right.
in the classroom, so it's
And-
the bus.
Yeah, and like in elementary, music and art come to the classroom
That
now,
is correct.
instead of walking down the hall and going, and so that stops.
right, but it was the bus. And in the past, we've had to quarantine kids on the bus, but they were in the very back seat. And so that reduced the numbers. So it just depends on where they're sitting. So that's kind of where we're at for those quarantine procedures and those kinds of things. The other thing is facilities. Our facility team has met, feels like every Wednesday for a while, till we've run out of places in Parsons to eat breakfast or to order breakfast from. So we have gone through all of the buildings, all of the facilities, looked at what DCS had labeled as things that were needed improvement, needed work. We've gone through and processed what we feel like is a high priority, long-term, short-term goals. Now we're in the process of collecting the amounts of money that it will take, just the numbers, to complete each of those projects so that we can build that out on a spreadsheet and determine, oh, we thought this was a super high priority and this is going to cost $1 million, so that we can budget accordingly and come up with a plan for the next 10 years. So I feel like we're making progress.
And I do have, James got back with me, and he said on those bills, the $7,000, they had to replace the unit in the auto shop and then repairs on some other units. So maybe David or Roger know the auto shop.
Is that new split unit?
It was a new split unit, at the classroom in the auto shop had an old air conditioning unit, an air conditioning unit sitting out. And it was dilapidated, it didn't even work. So he put a mini split unit in that would heat and air cool much more efficiently that classroom, because that classroom had no air conditioning whatsoever.
Well, what about, a while back, me and Joanne were looking at the exhaust systems and some of did you ever address those issues and get those replaced?
Exhaust,
Like in the wood shop, or Feenan's room and outside?
Or they
here?
I think we're in Trevor's room too.
the fumes was never done, and that's something that has to be done.
And that's with the paint room and
That paint room and that's
Right.
been something.
and that's on the facilities list.
Okay.
So it's something,
And then the other thing you asked about the Spark money, and Tanya said Spark money was used for PPE, protective equipment, mobile hotspots, bus hotspots, mostly PPE and technology needed to make remote learning workable. She said, I can send the report if you want one. The extra medical staff, when we put a
Right.
nurse aid in every building from September through December.
right, and all those
She
other
said
things were
they make it
reimbursables.
prorated, about 46,000 right now is used.
Don't we have another round coming in, though?
We have a round of 25 that we were eligible for connectivity. We went ahead and turned in everything that we had spent that would be eligible. It worked out to be about 57,000. Because what we'll do is, I wouldn't say we're guaranteed the 25, but you could have up to 25. And then they did say if you had other expenses and there was money left, you might be eligible for that to be
Is that through the
reimbursed.
county or the state?
That's through the county, but they get the money from the state.
Okay.
And then it goes to the county for disbursement. So, but that was a special connectivity spark. There was the regular spark, connectivity spark, and then there was a food service spark as well for food, so. All right, what else have we got? Okay, so coming up next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we are out for Thanksgiving recess. The following Monday, November 30th, we are also out. That is a conference comp day, when teachers work those 2 evenings for conferences. And then coming up December the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, that's the KASB annual convention, except it won't be in Kansas City or in Wichita. It's going to be via Zoom. So that's coming up shortly as well.
Any questions, any further questions for Lori? If not, we'll move to 7.0, which is the Tri-County Special Ed Board meeting. 2 or 3 items that probably need to be brought to your attention. One that I think is most important is that we purchased for all of our employees the Employee Assistance Program, which is something that will allow them to call in if they are having issues mentally. They can call in and get a counselor. They can there's a lot of issues there that they can go to. That costs the co-op about $3,700 for all the employees for 8 months. The bad news so far is that Medicaid fees for services is down about $55,000 from last year in the first quarter. A lot of that is because of those folks who do most of that billing were working on
Contingency plan.
contingency plans, and so they couldn't be working with students. Hopefully that will go back up and it won't be hurt so bad. And then we did accept resignation from 1 employee. Any questions? If not, we'll move to 8.0, which is reports from principals. I see that Mr. Barkus and Mr. Swanson are here.
And this is
And I think-
Curtin out there, too.
Mrs.
Yeah,
Doherty,
Kurt and Shelley
yeah.
are out there as well. Okay, so for the high school report, on the conferences, when Lori said that 27 to 30 number, that is lower than we usually have, but it did not include, like when the teacher would call, we called all the students that were failing in class, tried to reach all their parents. Some of them just had the conference right there on the phone when
we
they made
didn't-
that phone call. Those did not get included in that number, and we could reach out and see what that would do. It'd probably move it. I thought a good estimate would be about 10 to 15% of those that never got to conference to get that number. So I
And
just
that-
wanted to point that out.
And that would make it about what it had been historically,
Yeah, it's
45.
been about 35.
35,
in that
45.
range, 40%, so.
Yeah.
Evaluations, that's been different because we started later, so December 4th is when our evaluations are due for our two-timers. That'd be those new teachers that we have. We're nearly done with that fall cycle. It's still the 60 days. It just, in December, it makes it feel like you have a little bit more time, but we're getting a lot closer to having that done. Winter sports started today. I'll let Mr. Vargas talk a little bit about numbers. A huge thank you publicly to Roger Duroni for helping us with our soccer regional. It was cold, rainy, windy. We had heaters set up. We had a generator going. Roger helped with that. I met him at like 9 in the morning. We worked for a couple hours, thawed out, and met again in the afternoon and worked for a couple more hours. Roger, thank you. I thanked him privately, but I wanted to do that publicly. That was a huge help.
Thank you.
Debate and chess, they're competing, but they're doing everything virtually. So we're still having debate tournaments. We had one kid that had to go on quarantine, so he was able to just do debate from his house on a Saturday morning with his teammate, which is really kind of cool. I don't know how it works, but they're making it work. COVID just feels like it's all consuming. It just takes almost your whole day with whatever it might be. Today it was contact tracing, and it's overwhelming. But I will say this, the teachers have done a great job of trying to social distance in their classrooms. It's hard when you have a class of 18 to spread them out, so we've had some quarantines from that. But with our remote, that has taken some numbers out. I carry this big stick. I just went and cut a 6-foot stick in the shop because the tape measure was getting kind of old. So I have my COVID stick I carry around, and in most classrooms, we're only quarantining 1 student, maybe 2. We had one today that was 3, that was rare. So our teachers are spreading them out as far out as they can get them. You walk in that classroom and desks are in corners, and they're doing the best they can.
They are.
Okay, they're doing
They're
a
doing a good job.
really, really good job of keeping those kids apart. Lunch, we went with 2 shifts. That's going really well. We had sophomores have open lunch. That's reduced our numbers. Now that we've had some quarantines in there, you walk in the lunchroom and you look around and there's 48 kids in the lunchroom. Lunch is usually a place where things can happen because there's a lot of kids in a space. We've had 0 lunch issues. So it's been kind of a blessing in disguise, is reducing those lunch sizes. And we put in some protocols for contact tracing there. When the kids sit down for lunch, we have slips of paper. They write their name on the slip of paper, that who they ate with that day. We collect those, put them in envelopes, and put them in our storage. And it's helped. That our contact tracing with lunch has been really quick because we're able to go to those slips, pull it out, and go, Mike Castle ate with Lori Ray and Lou Martino, and that's who we have to quarantine. I stole that from another school. I didn't make that up. We had 44 in quarantine today at the high school. We had a total of 77 out. That is 19%. So our average daily attendance last year was around 95, and we were at 81 today. So we're seeing a lot of absences. When we have roughly 80 remote learners and 77 kids out, it just feels weird because we have 403 kids and we have about 150 of them out and not in the building.
And so then that reduces the numbers.
That
It feels
helps us
like-
when we contact trace.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it just feels like really few.
There's fewer people. Tri-County's getting hit real hard. We started with 3.5 staff and 3 paras, and today we're down to 2 staff and 1 para. So they have done some covering, trying to get everything in place so they can still provide those services. A big shout out to the Tri-County staff at the high school. They're figuring it out. And Emily McCambridge sent an email out today, and I sent something back to her and thanked our group. They're doing really good. The last thing is biscuits and gravy. It's takeout style. It's grab and go. So you just pull up, we take your order, we go in, we make it, we bring it out to your car, and you can go have biscuits and gravy at home, or you can eat them in your car if you want. So that's 7 to 10 this weekend. We'd love to see you if you want to come by. $5 for a plate. Just come say hi, wave. We'll get you your biscuits and gravy. You can go on about your morning. So that's what I got. I'll let Rob talk about winter sports.
So I echo what you say about the kids are doing a great job. Okay, so for lunch, you have smaller kids, number of kids in the cafeteria.
Yep.
But then where do they go for lunch?
They eat in the cafeteria because
Oh,
sophomores,
so none of them leave the campus to go to,
if they have open lunch, and that's 10, 11, and 12.
so that's my question. So
Yep.
where do they go, and do they go to a restaurant that's spaced?
It's up to them. My son goes home every day.
That's where my
I
son
know
goes.
that.
Yeah, my son.
But that's where the problems, they
Could
do
be.
well in school, but once they leave school, then,
Absolutely. We've had 0 cases of contact in the school.
Right.
0. They're all coming from outside the school.
That-
And yeah, whether we have open lunch or not, they're going after school, they're going to people's houses in the evenings, on the weekends. Yeah, so I don't think open lunch makes it worse for us. It's just one more time they might have a contact though.
and the other issue was Tri-County and the Paris situation. I've heard this from several people. We've got 5 permanent subs, correct?
We do.
And we call subs because we have teachers that get COVID or are quarantined. But Tri-County's going to have to, Emily's doing a great job, but a lot of paras don't get replaced. And that's become an issue. It's not on you. I'm just calling out Tri-County.
If they don't hire subs for their paras, right?
And that's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. And they've not typically, in years past, hired subs for their paras. What they've done is adjust the day.
You know what, Lori, I understand that. I'm just saying, during this pandemic, they better do some rethinking. That's all I'm saying. Because those paras, I've had paras during my teaching career, and they do a darn good job.
They do. We have
And
good
I'd
paras.
want a replacement if I lost my para, because I can't do it all by myself. So that's all I'm saying. And I'm not chewing you out. I'm just trying to get that word out to Tri-County. come up with some substitute paras.
Yeah, and I think they would come up with this, I mean, I think they could sure do that and advertise, and I think it would be similar to the issue we have with substitute teachers, is that if they're going lots of other, there just aren't, there's not a whole lot of people on the list, but they could sure advertise.
I'll contact Emily tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for me? Okay.
Okay, if we have 44 in quarantine and then we had 33 other kids that just don't come,
We had kids that were either unexcused, we had kids who were sick. We even sent, I think, 3 kids home during the day today. A couple of them had fevers that they caught in the middle of the day. We sent them out. So we ended the day with 77 kids absent.
Yeah, because when I ran the report this morning, we had the 44 in quarantine, and then there were 31 other students absent. So if we look district-wide for today, we had 84 students that were out for reasons other than COVID. Just, I don't feel good, or maybe I have to go to an appointment or something like that. And so our average daily attendance last year, district-wide, was right around 94%. And so when I did the math, today we had 1,306 students enrolled. We had 84 that were out for other absences. It worked out to be 6.4% were absent, which took us right to about 93, which is the average daily attendance, which is similar to what it had been last year. But, yeah.
Well, wait, that's not what I just heard from Eric.
But she said she didn't count the quarantine kids. I had the quarantine kids in my count.
Okay, well, that's my point.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Swanson?
Yep.
On your absentees, if they're absent for just a part of a day, 1 or 2 hours, are those counted as a full or a half? How do you do
When
that?
I counted today, I went and counted those that were going to miss the majority of the day. That would be 4 or more. So we did a count early, and it was like 76 or 75. We sent 2 home this afternoon, so that's why it went up to 77.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
If it was
because-
just, I'm just absent first hour, I did not count them in that count.
What's your staff absentee looking like?
Today was a little rougher. We had 7 out. Tomorrow we'll have, I think, I looked at it right after school. I think it was either 5 or 6. We have 1 on quarantine now. We have 3 more we think may end up in the next day or 2. But we have 1 coming back
Right.
from quarantine tomorrow. Thank goodness. We like getting them back.
Now, will the fall with the coaches gone, will there be many of those? Are we trying to limit how many days they leave early or is there anything we can do to that?
Well, not when like games start at 4:30 and you have to be there, you're there by 3:30. That means we will miss some school. We've always just covered those in-house as much as we could. But I will tell you, we have hit our 6th and 7th hour teachers that have plan. We hit them hard in the fall. And if I'm a teacher with 6th hour plan and I keep losing my plan because of people being gone, and then Mr. Swanson saying, oh, you need to be ready to teach remote and teach this and do these department meetings, it wears on you when you start taking people's planning periods away.
Now, those teachers do get paid for that,
Yes,
correct?
they do. Yes, they do. But one thing we can't ever give them back is time.
Right, I understand. I agree.
Okay, Rob? you're up.
We started our winter sports today. We had 30 boys out for basketball, 18 girls for basketball, and roughly 15 to 17 wrestlers, and then 2 girls out for wrestling, 2 female wrestlers. We are not having swimming this year. The state hospital is not opening their pool for probably another maybe 9 months from now, or at least a year from when they close. So we did lose our swimming, which unfortunately we co-opted with a couple other schools, so that forced a couple other schools to lose some swimming too. I have the protocols for the winter for our basketball games. I thought I'd save that. I think that's later on in the agenda. I can pass that out now if you want to look at it, and then when I have to come back up, if you want to discuss it. Our fall sports, I believe we quarantined 8 kids total for football. 6 of those were from one JV football game. One was from a parent and one was from a an LCC class. I believe that's the only sport we had to quarantine in, was football, all our fall sports.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it was a pretty good fall.
Hey, Rob,
Yes.
I'm looking at the middle school report on athletics and activities. Looks like they've got devastated in wrestling, canceling tournaments, Chanute, Fort Scott. I don't know if you've read this report or not, but holy mackerel. Caney Valley
Right.
canceled wrestling season. So,
You haven't seen Tyler's report. It
I have
says-
not seen Tyler's
Right, it
report,
says,
no.
due to COVID, Independence Middle School has canceled their tournament for tomorrow. Fort Scott has canceled their season, and Chanute Royster Middle School has canceled their tournament scheduled on 11/23 Monday, next Monday. And that only leaves the Parsons Middle School tournament scheduled for Tuesday of next week, where each athlete would have the opportunity to compete in 2 matches. Because of COVID quarantines and injury, we're down to just 2 athletes at the middle school. And so Fort Scott and Caney found themselves in similar situations, so they've canceled their season. What Tyler's decided is, considering all this, they're going to cancel the tournament and in practice 4 days early.
The
So
wrestling season is really short.
Yeah,
though,
wrestling
at
in
the
middle school, they start,
wrestling is,
and it's like
A month.
3 or 4 week period,
Yeah.
maybe a month, maybe over a month. So if you have 14 days of quarantine, you're missing half your season
right,
there.
and so
I
that's,
think that would be more of a reason.
The Acacia protocols for wrestling they want you to not have those big tournaments. So a lot of teams are going to 3 or 14
to duels and things like
duels
that.
and quads and stuff like that.
so the high school has or hasn't just started?
We just started today.
So have you heard from some of the other school districts that we compete with, where they are in regard to,
We have an AD meeting Wednesday
Okay.
that we're supposed to get everybody's numbers for.
Would you like to recap the finals of our fall activity seasons? I think we had some pretty good success in some places that might be
Yeah,
nice to-
soccer was real successful for our first year. We made it we actually hosted a playoff game, made it to the, I believe, quarterfinals. Played a team that got beat we made it before the quarterfinals, and the Caulfield got beat by a team that made it to the finals.
I've heard nothing but positive accolades about Parsons High School soccer, and then with the Shawn Hill soccer field and flag football field, it's really going to be big.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we were just very pleased to get through all our seasons. We missed one cross-country meet. I decided not to let them go because Independence had a high number leading up to that week, so that was the only competition we missed of all our sports teams. So very fortunate there.
Any other questions for Rob? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rob.
The middle school, I believe, are just going to be oral written reports, is that correct?
It will be written reports, as both are on quarantine. He'll be out of quarantine tomorrow.
So then we'd have our elementary, I think Mr. Freeze and Shelley Gardner here. Ms. Russell is not?
Nope, she has a report, it's attached. She's also home on quarantine.
Shelley, you're up.
All right. So at Lincoln, I'll talk a little bit about parent-teachers conference. I think the teachers were a little apprehensive at first, but they seem to enjoy doing it over Zoom and enjoy talking on the phone. So in pre-K, we had 99%, kindergarten 91%, and first grade 97%, but they're still working on getting those to 100, so we're not giving up yet. Kindergarten had their science day on Friday, and the topic was stabilization, and they had a Twin Valley truck come in and show them how they stabilize the truck when they lift up their buckets. And tomorrow is the 50th day of school, so first grade is going to be doing some activities to celebrate that day.
50 days.
50 days.
It's pretty exciting.
How many teachers do you have out?
Teachers or staff?
Teachers.
Teachers, I think just one or zero. We had zero. We have zero. Zero teachers.
All right, then how many staff?
1, 2, 3.
Including A's and Paras, I think there's how many?
I'll say there's 4 right off the top of my head.
we have,
Staff out that it's not COVID.
no.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not.
that's just it. It's kind of hard to sometimes find substitutes because we have COVID on top of just regular life,
Staff,
to, professional development and appointments and those things. You don't have a classroom teacher that is out.
We don't have a classroom teacher out. I mean, for COVID, they've been
No.
out for different other things.
No.
So you have no staff members out that are quarantined or COVID related?
COVID related, yeah. Like today, we had 14 people out, but that wasn't all COVID.
I think there are 4.
So we're at, are we at 10 maybe,
I think there are,
with our aides and
How many?
maybe 10?
10 that are out because of COVID
Or
related?
quarantine, yeah, quarantined.
Okay.
Not COVID. We don't have but a few positive COVID, so,
right, and so that's.
COVID related?
yeah, COVID
quarantine.
related. Yep.
There are 25 staff, today there were 25 staff district-wide that were out for COVID leave.
Yeah.
So,
25?
25 district-wide. So it is,
Some aides and-
yeah, aides,
Yeah,
paras,
that's-
speech and language, interpreter, teachers, all of our,
Tri-County has really been.
right.
Tri-County's hit hard.
They
Yeah,
have been hit hard. So,
Thank you,
That was my
Shelley.
point.
Yeah.
I know that.
As I think about where we're at, 9 weeks, I really want to let you guys know how proud I am of our kids. We're wearing our masks. There's some that are uncomfortable with allergies and things, but there's been 0 complaints from parents. Our kids are doing everything they can. They're wearing their masks, they're socially distancing, we're trying to wash hands. We've not really let our guard down. So I was trying to do the math. We've not really had a lot of staff miss because of COVID. We've got 1 now, right, Miss Ray? She's Tri-County.
yes.
We had a couple
And she's-
earlier.
And she's not, and she is there simply as a close
Yeah,
contact.
close contact
So she
to
has
a-
to quarantine.
So, so we've really been, I think, a combination of lucky and,
You're right.
But like anything, I think because we set the tone early, we've done a good job of controlling what we can control.
That's
And so we've been pretty lucky. We've had some staff gone, but life happens. We've had some bad things happen, with some, we've had a couple funerals and just some things that happen. So it's been kind of tough, but our kids are doing a great job. On Friday, we did our first Zoom award ceremony, and it was, I didn't print off how many parents showed up, but I think there was over 50, and we just bounced from classroom to classroom, and it was pretty enjoyable. The kids actually like that better because they don't have to, sit quietly, and it was it went really well. I got a lot of positive comments. We had 99 kids out of our 2 grade levels be on the AB or straight A honor roll, so we're able to say, hey, let's try to get 100 when we come back after Christmas. So that's been a real positive. And then parent-teacher conference, it went well too, attendance-wise, because we were able to, we had 100% of our 4th graders make contacts where we could visit with them. And we were missing 4 or 5 5th graders, but in the last couple days, I think we've either had a live phone call, a Zoom, or a real text talk with every parent to talk about where we are. So I think things are going well. We've got a really good routine. It's really been a good first 9 weeks. I think that given all the things that were presented to us, we've really been doing a pretty good job and really been happy with the positive attitude our kids have had. So it's been a good start.
I have to echo what you said. I think we've done a really great job with the masking and the distancing. And Zoom does have some advantages. For example, on KSP meetings, I've met people throughout the state of Kansas that I would have never met before. And now I know who they are. I can't wait to meet them in person. I mean, I've met 20 or 30 people that are superintendents and school board members. And so there are some advantages, and it does give you a certain amount of freedom. So, but I appreciate what
I'm glad you mentioned that. I forgot, one advantage of Zoom is, in the past, we like to do site council meetings during the day, and a lot of people can't, but we're gonna have our site council meeting, gosh darn it, what day? December 3rd at 11:30, and I sent some texts to, we're gonna have a pretty, I've had a lot of people say, yeah, I can do it via Zoom. So we're gonna have a site council meeting December 3rd via Zoom. If any of you guys wanna be part of that, send me a text and I'll add you to that Zoom invite. But I guess I don't wanna be a politician, don't waste a good crisis, I guess. It's whatever the benefits we can, some of the things have made it a little bit better.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there have been things that we've learned that we're going to continue on after this is
Oh,
over.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things we'll try to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
You guys.
We're ready for new business. 9.0 is action on donations.
All right, that's on page 33 of your board packet. There was a donation to the district office from the Patterson Family Foundation for a pandemic expenses micro grant valued at $13,050. That was the total there for the month. At Garfield, PTO donated for a restricted meal $150, and Tank Connections made a restricted donation for $500, totaling $650 at Garfield. At Lincoln, the Nazarene Church donated school supplies valued at $160. Parsons Public Library donated crafts for students times four different crafts for $80. PTO donated parent-teacher conference meals for staff valued at $175. There was an anonymous donation of Halloween face masks for kids valued at $50 for a total of $465 donated at Lincoln. At Guthridge, PTO made a restricted Halloween project donation of $325. PTO also made a conference food donation of $150 for a total donation of $475 at Guthridge. The middle school, Kayla Forge, made theater donations valued at $250. RW and Jean McCandless, theater donations valued at $25. And New Life Clothing, theater donations valued at $300 for a total of $575. At the high school, there was an anonymous donor for the Skills USA program, $20. Stevens Vending Corporation Positive Reinforcement Program, $10.11. An anonymous donor for the PHS Honor Flight, $425. Other anonymous donors, PHS Honor Flight, $896. Anonymous donors, PHS Honor Flight, $153. New Life Clothing and More, PHS Honor Flight for $100. Strategic Partners donated to the football program, $100. Dan Manners donated to the football program, $25. Eric Stark donated to the band program a drum set valued at $400. And there was an anonymous donor for the soccer program camera for filming the games for $350. So there was $2,479.11 donated at the high school this month. That made our total district school donations for the month of October $17,694.11.
Any questions? Need a motion to accept the donations, please?
I so move.
Motion by Olivia,
Second.
second by Joanne. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, carries 7-0. 9.1 is action to purchase a bus. Rick is here, I believe.
He is.
Yes, sir. Come on in, Rick.
Yeah, when we,
Good evening.
a couple years back, went and bought our own buses, part of that plan, long-term, was that every other year we would purchase a bus so that our fleet could stay up to date. And it's already been 2 years, which is hard to believe. So it's on the agenda, so he's got some things for you.
This year, I'm asking that we purchase a Bluebird bus, and one of the reasons that I'm asking that we do something different than Thomas is because I've not been happy with the service after the sale. I've shared a lot of this information with Lori, and she agreed that it's time to look at another option. Having a lot of trouble with getting morning work done, getting reimbursement for the mechanic when he does morning work. And when I was up at St. Paul, I drove a Thomas bus for 4 years. They're a great bus. And Wichita Truck, we dealt with them when I was up in USD 101. They're a family-owned business. I'm not going to say they're perfect, but I think it's time to try to do something else.
Where's the specs on the buses we have? I see I want to know them. I would like to know the mileage of what the buses are, the ones we have, how old they are, what bus this is replacing. I see nothing to that effect.
Okay, and I wasn't aware that you wanted that, or I would have brought that for you this
Well,
evening.
no, but remember last
So-
time we did this, we knew the mileage or, when we talked about buying these things, but
These are brand new buses, so these.
These specs here are very similar to the ones we purchased.
no, I'm not talking about specs. I want to know
These
about,
specs here are very similar to the ones we purchased because I sent the specs of the new buses that you got out to Wichita Truck, and I asked him to build a bus similar to what we got. He came back with a $103,000 bid, but he said, Rick, he said, I've got a couple buses in production, very similar to that, and they're about $4,000 less. And I looked at the difference between the specs on the buses that we got for Thomas and these specs. There's not a whole lot of difference.
So is this a replacement for one of the buses that we have? Or is this in addition to?
I'm asking this is another bus. We've had some issues this year where we've had to pull kids out of classes early because I've only got 3 extra buses. There's days we have 4 and 5 trips.
So the
we
plan
have-
had been to replace the oldest bus in the fleet, which I do believe it was like, I can't remember right off the top of my head, but what was it? Maybe our oldest bus is a 2000 and,
It's a 2014.
so,
But they're all running pretty good. I
Right.
mean, there's no complaints other than the nickel and dime stuff that we have trouble with and the warranty stuff that we try to get fixed, which we have struggles with. But
So has the number of kids increased that are using buses? Is that part of the logic?
there's days we'll have two buses going to football games. We'll have a soccer bus. We'll have a cross-country. There's all kinds of sporting events that we need buses for.
Okay, other than sport, I'm talking about kids that are coming to school for classes. Do we have more kids using the bus to come to school now, or less?
I'd have to
I'd
go
say
and
there's
look.
probably less this year because of what we're dealing with in the pandemic.
I guess that's part of it.
Right, and we've asked as many, parents, if they can, that was one thing we asked, that they take their
Right.
child to school if they could do that. So the original plan had been just to replace that bus so that we could keep those cycles. However, what we found is that we do have so many activities, and we've added soccer, and also typically, cross-country maybe could take a van, or a smaller group could take a van, and we've not done that.
Yeah,
so
but we
that
just
could
read the
spread it.
middle school report, and we have fewer activities going on because schools aren't going to participate, so I'm not
Well,
buying that
there's
logic.
fewer wrestling in other places.
You're busy.
That's 2 buses.
Your busy months are September, October, and Rob can vouch for me. There's days we'll have 4 buses going, I only have 3 extra ones. And I can give you, like on October the 1st, I had to pick a soccer team up 50 minutes earlier than they needed to get out of class, run them to Columbus, come back, get kids, go to Altamont, send that bus back to Columbus. And then when a route bus got finished, it would go to Altamont and pick up students. But the bottom line is, they're taking students out of class sooner than they need to be. And I mean, that to me is, I don't agree with that, but that's what we have to do.
And there has been money budgeted for a bus. We have taken and put in capital outlay and transportation each year. Over the last 2 years, we've put 55 aside so that there would be the funding and so we could plan ahead, which was part of having the plan, so.
my part is, you cut me off before you would listen to what I had to say. I said I wanted to see the specifics on each bus. How many miles, how old it is, and where it is in the circuit. That's what I wanted to see.
We can get that information for you.
Well, I'm not gonna vote. Why are we in such a hurry to do that? And why can't we buy a used bus?
Well, that hadn't been the plan. The plan had been to replace
We were gonna replace, that's the key.
with a newer model.
But
so
we're not
as-
replacing,
Well,
right?
because we're in a different situation. We have to remember that 2 years ago, when we bought buses, we'd never done it before. And so we weren't sure exactly how many buses we were gonna need to meet the needs.
But
And
we
so-
bought a spare bus, did we not?
We did, and we have used it, and used it, and used it. So,
Well,
but I wasn't, so you want the current mileage?
yes, I wanna know where each bus is in the deal, the mileage, this, that, and the other. I don't need to know the specs of these buses. I want to know the mileage of it, the year of it.
So are all the buses functioning and operating well right now?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
and I want to tell you guys right now, Steve Ballmer is doing an excellent job. Whenever I have a
Yeah.
problem, he drops what he's doing
Oh,
and
I
he takes
agree.
care of it. He's doing a fabulous job.
And that's a good thing. And I'm kind of with Roger. I mean, I'd like to buy a new car right now, but, and I'm driving a 2010 Buick, but I don't have the money. And with what's going on with this COVID thing, I'm gonna be tight fiscally, like Roger's saying. So, maybe a good used bus might work.
Well, here's the part that bothers me, and this is not specific, but you want to spend $100,000, and yet my grandson sits in a class over here and does not have the proper ventilation or proper activities for that class. And I've talked about it for 4 years. I'm tired of it. I am really tired of it. And yet, you want to buy a new bus. So tell me about safety and health. I've heard it before, and we bought stuff, quick. And you want to buy a bus. You're not getting any yes from me.
So,
How long is this bid good for?
The bus is due for a January delivery. If we don't take it tonight, some other district can buy it. But the reason that we've asked that this early in the year is because the ones that are in production, they usually come out January, February, and when they're sold, then you got to start ordering buses again. So and there's like a 4% increase when you order now. Prices have gone up.
Well, so what's worth more, the health and safety of kids or a bus?
well, and obviously the health and safety, and so that's something that we need to address.
And that's what I brought up
And I'm-
earlier when I
and I'm
asked
not-
about ventilation.
I'm
But
not
Laura,
su-
you know how adamant I've been about this, and we've done nothing.
Are you talking about the paint room?
Yes, the whole gambit.
Right.
Yes.
And so we're in the process of getting those things.
I know. I don't want to say any more. But you know how I feel about this because it's not.
I think we're going through that process in the
But the
facility.
trouble is, we were at this a year ago, and then we had to wait.
Well, then, COVID.
No, we had to wait because this other company come in. And then now we're shoving it back again.
Well, the plan is to have something in December, and we did have the other company come in because they are the licensed architects and engineers and
But
the
we don't have to
professionals.
use them.
No, we don't have to use them. You're absolutely right.
And we didn't learn anything from them, truthfully. Truthfully, we didn't learn much.
Well, for someone like myself who didn't know maybe a whole lot, I think there were some things. But if you were very familiar with facilities, that might not have been a big growth
Well, I don't think we ought to push a bus. I think this ought to be tabled, and we need to take what is first, because this is like getting thrown down my throat. This is what it is to me.
I would personally like to see the numbers, what we estimate, which is our annual expenditures as far as staffing, the outlay expenditures that we have in our bus program for us doing it in-house compared to, they would be old numbers, whatever 2017, 2018 numbers that we were using for Durham, so we can compare, okay, what's it costing us in-house now versus what we were outsourcing?
Okay,
That's a
we
good
can,
point.
we can look at that. That'll take time in the business office,
Yeah.
but we can pull those things.
If we're asking for a brand new, but I was under the impression it was a rotation, and again, we were going
It
to
is
sell a
a-
bus.
It is a
but-
rotation, and it just got to the point where when we realized that we didn't have the number of activities that we have, we don't have the buses to support, because drivers are driving here and then back and forth, but
And we have enough current staff to accommodate the buses.
we do.
It'd be a lot more palatable if I personally had a understanding of where we are compared to where we were.
Mr. Giefer and I can work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a motion to table this until December?
Sure.
I moved the table till December.
Motion by Lou, second by David. Table this item until December. Any discussion? All in favor, say
I
aye.
would like to say a couple things.
Okay.
That'd be great.
From afar here. So, I understand Roger's request for specs and so forth on the current buses when it was going to be a replacement. That's less valid if we're going to add a bus. And I also clearly support David's request for the pre and post transportation plan that we have, where we were looking at our annual outflows under a management contract with Durham. And now I would like to point out that it may not be as bad of a job, since when we were looking at purchasing buses versus going with another local or not so local agency to run buses for us, we had some numbers in front of us as a board. So maybe Tanya can go back and look at those numbers, because we had a pretty good idea of what it was costing us annually.
We did. We calculated all of that.
And what was more important, not what it was costing us annually, but what it was going to cost us annually when we couldn't be part of the group we were part of.
Right, because the rates initially, we're going to go up 30 additional %. That's
Yes,
correct.
and so let's make sure we're looking at not what we were paying, but what we were going to have to pay if we didn't buy the buses. And so I think that's important.
Okay.
That's why we bought the buses to begin with.
That is
Was
correct.
because we didn't want to pay an additional 30% increase. And so I just don't want to lose sight of that. And that's all I have comments on the motion. I don't have a problem tabling it. I just want to clarify the accounting engagement, so to speak.
Any other comments?
I just wonder if those companies have backed off and come down on their 30% increase with the, I would like to see what a new proposal would look like.
For us to sell our buses and outsource busing?
If you're outsourcing a company and using their services, I just wonder what their services are for 20, 21, 22.
Is that something?
I don't know that I would go that far right now. We've got a transportation director, we've got buses that we've acquired. I think we've probably committed to this for mid to long term now that we have buses. Potentially, maybe in a few years, we may want to look at that, but I don't know if you want to try to take a bath on some buses or not. Generally, whenever you buy vehicles, they don't appreciate the value.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Want to do that, but we can discuss that as a board.
No, that's a good point.
Any other questions, comments? No, we do have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. Okay, 9.2 is action on early technology purchases for the 21-22. Ben is here. Come on in.
Hello.
Hello.
If you turn to page 40 in your packet, you'll see a 5-year tech plan from Simpler Times. Not everything on it is still valid, so I will be updating that. And, since the whole COVID situation. But the issue with procurement of technology right now is the time frame. So if I wait for next year's funding, which would be July 1st purchasing, it may take 6 months to get the equipment. So what I'm looking at is what is actually on the 2021-2022 list, what needs to be replaced as a part of need. This isn't a want thing, it's more of a need for how old the systems are now. And we're looking at ordering things in December, January, to be able to get it on time. Because we also want to get it in the summer so we can work on it and get it installed before kids get here. So it doesn't really work out well with our funding structure, because again, we do have that June, July cutover, but this is basically what I'm looking at. If you look at page 41, that's kind of a rundown of things from this list. An approximate cost, I'm hoping that maybe that second biggest line item can go down. We're looking into various options for that, so. But this gives you a rough estimate of, and I mean, if you look at like the 2021, 2022, we were looking at $259,000 for projects anyways, so. And so that's what I'm here to do, is basically see if, because if we wait, I have no idea. We're still waiting on some tech equipment to come in. Our high school and middle school staff don't have Chromebooks. And those were ordered many, many months ago, and we're supposed to be here multiple times. Deadlines have come and passed. I think we're on our 4th iteration, so.
Now we're in January, is the last word we heard.
About how many still have to come in then?
None of them have.
None of the staff
high school and middle
Chromebooks
school
have.
staff Chromebooks have come in, so.
When are you expecting them?
January.
Now is January, but there's, they could get kicked again. It's kind of, we're up to when they come off the factory line, where we are at in line to get them. So that's a big thing too. Because really right now you're not placing orders, you're getting your place in line, so.
So on your one-on-one initiative, do all the kids have a computer right now?
Yes.
All right. Do staff have availability for laptops or desktops?
All staff have desktops, yes.
Okay, so yours is an issue of urgency. Is that your point?
In terms of the age of the equipment, where it's at, yes. Our major issue is the second and third line items are grade school computers. We've really struggled with them this year. They are very end of life. So.
I can attest to that, Lou, because they were not good, to me, good quality when they were bought. They were so-so.
Well, they
were not as good as an iMac.
That they effectively are an iMac just without a built-in screen.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
But they're about half the cost, which is why we went with those, so.
Now, what's the size of the screen on the new ones?
It depends on if you get an iMac, it can be 21.5 or 27 inches, or if you get a Mac Mini, you can put whatever monitor you want on it, so.
But what are these, as you're saying, for instructional staff?
We're going iPads, or, iMacs is what we've quoted, but again, we're looking into options.
So you're asking for $134,450?
Basically asking for the ability to go and get these spec'd out and purchases. A lot of these are state contracts.
41?
Yes. So that's the approximate value, yeah.
If these are ordered now, will those be possibly billed into the 21-22 fiscal budget?
See, and that's just it. We won't know until
Correct.
after he's ordered them, when we will get them, because then in the 21-22 budget, there's money now, and there will definitely be money for technology items in the 21-22. It's possible we may have to pay for it. It just depends on how long it takes the company.
You can look at it as a reduction of the project cost for next year into this year.
Right.
If that's what you're asking. That's effectively what this is. I'm not going to buy it again next year. So, but I'm just kind of in a rock and a hard place right now, and it's nothing I can do to make this go faster.
So in short, you're just essentially asking for us to go ahead and order now something that we would have in the past, pre-COVID era, something we would have put forward another 8 or 9 months down the road.
Correct.
And we're just assuming that because of all the backlog of school systems getting onto one-in-one systems, that it's going to take months and months for us to go ahead, more than likely to get a majority of these items.
Correct. And I just got information today that one of my orders just got canceled. They said, we're not making these anymore.
Yeah.
So I had to pivot on that, so
And
we're having fun.
Yeah, and I'm assuming most of these places, they won't invoice until they ship, which will more than likely be in 2021 anyway, so.
That is, yeah.
But they could ship next week. You can't get an active stock. It's because my vendors don't know from the suppliers until a ship arrives and forklifts unload them and they go, oh, we got 40,000 of these things today. And I'm like, where were they 6 months ago? So we're basically in a random time frame right now, but none of it's good news.
Yeah. So some of this could invoice in 2020, some of it more than likely will be 2021.
I would say the majority of it will be 2021. I mean, since we're still waiting on Chromebooks from last summer that haven't arrived.
I just can't
So,
guarantee either
right.
way.
No, I understand.
It's really completely out of my control. The only thing I could do is hopefully get it early enough to where we get it on time.
Right, so at least
when
we're
we
in
need it.
line.
So you would deduct the 134,450 from your 21-22 projected budget?
Correct. And again, this is, page 40 is our 5-year plan from a simpler time. So again, a lot of those line items no longer count because we purchased a lot of iPads and a lot of Chromebooks early to get the one-to-one, during COVID. So anything relating to that, you can wipe off that list.
So you're saying it's 21-22 is actually, your projections actually should be less than what you have written down here?
Potentially, yes.
Yes.
I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is we did get COVID funding, which we
Right.
are using for some of this technology as well.
Correct. So, I mean, my numbers for 2021 are way off. I mean, that's not, we spent a lot more than that, especially when you count those funds,
When
so.
you count all the COVID
When
money.
you count the COVID money, yeah.
But, it was nice while it lasted. It lasted a good 6 months or so, 5-year tech plan, so it can be redone.
And we'll get that 5-year plan again, probably March, April, or before that?
I mean, whenever I can make one in a week if the board really needs it, so.
Well, and I think, we've got to get back to our strategic plan and look at that. And I visited with the administrators about that. And so that'll be something we do the next couple months. And then that technology piece, will need to be a part of that. So hopefully next month we'll have the facilities plan. And then maybe in January, February, we can talk about our long-term strategic plan and then the tech plan.
I mean, that's what
As a
really hit us
complement
hard were the grade school teaching and staff computers because they were planning to be purchased next year anyway, so they're end of life. And yet we're Zooming all day on them, which is very intense on the computers. So we've had a lot of issues that we can't solve with the equipment we have. We're just trying to get through it, so. I mean, if it becomes a priority thing, let me know and I could prioritize these, but I mean, I've already taken out some things that I can live without. This is pretty much the priority list for me, so.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve this or not approve it?
I move that we accept Ben's proposal.
Motion by Joanne,
Hold on, with the caveat that this will be deducted off of the,
Right.
Off of next year's budget, correct.
okay.
Second.
Just a matter of clarification.
yes.
It's going to be deducted off of next year's budget if it's paid in next year's budget. I mean, let's just make sure we understand.
Right.
We're $134,000 here. If it comes in this year, we're going to pay for it. If it comes in next year, it's going to be paid next year. I mean,
Correct.
that's the common sense aspect. We just need to all understand all that.
Right.
All right, okay.
David, did you second that? I thought so. Okay, so motion by Joanne, second by David to approve this plan. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, carries 7-0. 9.3 is discussion concerning the KSB delegate voting. I will tell you that this year, there's going to be 2 different delegate assemblies, one in December, I believe it's on the 2nd, and that will be to vote for a president of KASB for the next year. That's the only item will be voted on in December. On January 21, there'll be another delegate assembly meeting, going to be a Zoom, I'm sure, and that will vote on the points that the legislative committee has just put together on Wednesday. Last Saturday, we finished that work. That material will be out in the next few days or couple weeks for sure. So we can look at it at our December meeting or maybe our January meeting to see what those issues are. So right now, the only thing we're going to vote on in December is the president, and there's only one name up.
So that'll be hard.
And any comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to 9.4, discussion of possible action on the district winter COVID protocol.
All right, I don't know if.
This will,
Mr.
do you want to start with activities?
Yeah, let's start with activities, so then
Okay.
they.
And you all got the handout. Mr. Barkis, would you fill us in on what's going to happen at this point in time, which may change tomorrow?
Well, at this point in time, the last athletic director meeting we had, Keisha was at 50% capacity in our gym, so me and Mr. Swanson went in and counted all the space we had in our gym. We could roughly, at 50%, I think, around 650 people. We've made it where we're going to give 100 tickets to the visiting team. They can distribute them how they want. We're going to have 307 for ours, actually, with players, band members, cheerleaders, and dance team. Getting that for family members. Then we will, if they're left over, for example, if Mr. Swanson doesn't need his 3, we'll offer it to another in case someone has a grandma or grandpa coming down. Try to keep it within our players, and then the tickets after that we will allow to our students. As of now, we are not going to offer general admission. We're going to ask people to watch the live stream that KLKC provides, which will be on our Facebook page or on YouTube. Of course, you'll have to have your temperature taken when you come in. You'll have to have masks. We're going to close, if you're familiar with our gym, I know you guys have all been in there, directly behind our players, or behind our players' benches, are going to be for our players and the opposing team's players. Just behind their benches, there'll be no fans on that lower portion. Then right behind the scorers table, there'll be media like newspaper, radio, just those essential personnel there. We're going to try to keep our upstairs with the seat backs only to our home fans and put all the visitors across the gym in the 2, where do I have that?
The northwest.
Yeah, the furthest north, the northern sections.
Northeast.
Yeah, northeast. We're going to try to use those 2, maybe 3 sections for their 100 tickets to try to keep them physically distanced. If possible, we'd like to leave that middle section empty and then have our students fill in the other sections. The mezzanine will be for the band. They will have the mask and the bell covers that Keisha's required for all those instruments. They will leave they'd like you to play for 30 minutes and then leave for 10 to 15 for what they call clean air exchange. I guess that just means the air clears out. So halftime of games, they will not play, and then between games, they will also vacate that area. They will be more than 10 feet away from our fans, which is also what Keisha recommends. For our auxiliary gym, we're only going to allow 2 tickets per player. No cheerleaders from either team in that gym. That's basically just, you get two people to come watch you play in that aux gym. And then after that game, we will ask all people to, like if you're watching the JV boys game and that's over, please leave, and the freshman girls, there's usually 10 or 15 minutes. Hopefully they'll clear out and the new fans will come in, because that aux gym is only one side, and if there's one area I'm concerned about, it'd definitely be the aux gym as far as social distancing and getting a lot of people in there. Wrestling right now, we're going to have, since it'll be smaller teams, there won't be 8 or 9 or 10 teams, it'll be 3 to 4 teams. We're not going to have any limit on wrestling right now. We'll see how that goes. And as I said, swimming we're not going to have, so.
In the wrestling, are you going to have a home team area and a visiting team?
Yeah, we'll set, depending on what teams we'll have, we'll assign them an area, probably for fans and wrestlers, both.
Keep those to that.
Yeah, we should be able to spread those out in the 4 corners of the gym and have, I won't say plenty of room, but be able to social distance.
Which individuals in the gym will be mandated to wear masks?
Everyone.
Referees?
Referees are, I'm not sure on referees, actually.
And referees, Keisha has asked us as a league to talk to our referees, and as a host team to talk to our referees. Keisha's not recommending that they be masked during the games.
What about whistles?
Well, they won't,
If they're not masked, they've got their whistles.
They have their whistle.
They've got the electronic ones. We're using those in practice. Those are not loud enough in a gym, the electronic whistles are not loud enough in a loud gym to be heard very well. Yeah, we're finding that out.
But everyone else will be.
I was at the executive board is meeting this Wednesday and Thursday, and a lot of these issues are on the board agenda. But right now, I know that the officials are not going to be required, at this point in time, not required to wear a mask during the game. They will between games, quarters, timeouts, they will pull their mask up on. If a coach wants to talk to them, the coach has to put a mask on, a mask on, and the official will put a mask on as well. Those are the guidelines that are in place right now. I don't know if there'll be any others. We're going to require officials to wear a mask and blow a whistle. That's pretty difficult to do. It's hard on the ears.
Well, that's why I asked about the electronic whistle.
They're
What
very
about
good.
the players that aren't playing? They're wearing masks
They
on
will
the
wear a
bench?
mask.
Yes.
Yes, when they're coming
Cheerleaders are wearing masks?
Yes. And they will not be stunning.
And then you will ask someone to leave if they're not wearing a mask?
Yeah,
Yes.
we talked as a league about that too, and the consensus in the league, except for one school, is that if someone's not masked, we will go tell them, hey, you need to put your mask on, this is a requirement for an indoor sport, and if they don't comply, they're asked to leave. And we've talked to Officer Queen about even having an extra officer at our games, just for enforcement on that. Even though the crowd will be much smaller, we want to have that extra enforcement.
That's
Yep.
smart.
Well, it's a city mandate as well.
Yes.
Well, it's a good point.
Here.
On the 100 tickets, let's say the visitors only have 50. We're just going to forget that, not worry about the
We're just going to send them 100 beforehand and. they're-
use it or lose it.
Yes, correct.
Will the board members be able to get into these games? Because I don't see our names down there.
I'll have to count the
What's
tickets.
the real answer? Not right now, no.
Well, I hope we don't end up like the middle school. I mean, it's not looking too, I appreciate what you guys are doing. You're trying to do the best that you can with what we've got going, but I hope we have a plan B and C.
I can see that a concession stand crowding up. I assume there will be some kind of it'll be a quick food in and out.
Yeah. There will be just packaged food and bottled drinks. There will be nothing hot that we make there.
Okay.
Well, and I can see people using
Yeah,
common
other than
sense too.
nachos, because
about,
they come
Well, but you know,
prepackaged.
kids, I mean, I'm
Oh, yeah,
seeing
Kids
kids crowding in there, and there'll be no running around in the halls anymore.
Well, I know.
They won't have.
They won't have tickets
they
to
won't
get
be
in.
there.
To get in.
Oh, that's right,
They
that's a
won't
good
be
idea.
there.
Boy, that'll
Restrooms might
be
be an
nice and
issue.
quiet.
It really,
Yeah.
be able to
Yeah.
the ballgame.
We'll have, we have
High school
restrooms
students.
in the off gym and then off the main
Oh, yeah,
gym.
there'll be 2 or 3 of them.
That's,
At least in a restroom setting, at least the close contact is 10 minutes or more. And so if it takes you 10 minutes to stand at a urinal, probably go see your doctor. It should be quick in and out in a restroom.
but the pure numbers may be an issue at one time.
One last question. So let's say if a parent or a student what if a player gives one of his tickets to his younger brother who's in grade school? So he can be in there then, right?
He could be in there then.
Okay.
And he would have to be with an adult because the elementary kids aren't supposed to just be dropped off by themselves without an adult.
Okay,
Aren't
we're going to watch
supposed
that.
We're gonna, right.
Oh.
And there'll be so many fewer people,
People.
that'll be easier to catch, I think. So,
So you don't know if any other school districts right now are having issues with,
High school level?
at the high school level?
Everyone
You
just.
have a meeting next week.
Yeah, everyone just started today, so I would say, I haven't heard of anyone in our league that did not start any sports today.
Okay.
Any other questions for Rob or Eric?
Sounds good to me.
Thank you. Appreciate your hard work on this. And
Yes, thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
yeah, they've done a really good job. Just
Okay,
really-
we have other issues to discuss here, I'm sure.
Well, something else that we probably need to talk about is, as we see in the news and in other areas, lots of groups are going remote at different times, and what does that mean, and what do those numbers need to look like in order for us to kind of make that change? So, with the school gating criteria at the beginning, when we talked about that and met with Dr. Culver, we had talked about how really student absenteeism was what she wanted to look at in the buildings to determine, okay, is it so prevalent that we need to close the school or go remote that way? Our numbers right now, if you pull this out, well, first we need to clarify. We're fortunate, and we didn't think about this in August when school started because we had not, had school in a pandemic and didn't realize when our students go on quarantine now, all of you made the investment so they'd each have a device and they can stop by the district office because the board's made the investment that they can have the internet. And so if a kid's on quarantine, they take their device, they can stop and get their internet. And so their learning hasn't ceased. So they're still participating, and attendance is considered participation. And so for those large number of students that have to quarantine, we're fortunate because they take the device, they get the internet, and they zoom in with their class and continue. So our absenteeism rate is based on, the way we figured it, is based on students that are absent for other reasons separate than quarantine. Now, if a kid on quarantine doesn't show up and do the Zoom, they don't log in and then they are considered absent. They are counted as absent. Where do you want to start and look?
Well, hold on. According to our own policy, when the policy was written, obviously it wasn't written with COVID in mind.
True.
So when I talked to Luke Soba, the KSP attorney this morning, he said we may have to amend our policy to fit the COVID because Jeff brought up a good point about attendance or absences, and it's a pretty good point, and I agree with him. What do we mean by an absence? And part of our definition is an absence of 2 or more hours in any school day shall be considered an absence. So what is an absence? And you're saying, well, if they're on remote, that's not an absence. But then why are they home? Because they're not feeling well?
Because they're on quarantine. If
they're
not feeling well and unable to participate in remote, then they would be considered absent. That would be an absence. But if
there's nothing in our policy that says anything about participation. And according to Kansas State Department of Health, the local policy determines what we consider as absent. Ours does not address what you just said.
Okay, so
that's my point.
So this year KSDE gave us a few ways to do school. We could do it virtually, we could do it remotely, or we could do it on site, brick and mortar. And so the key was participation. And so if a student was participating on site in class, remotely in class, or virtually in class, they were counted towards our attendance when we did, for the auditor, for attendance purposes. It was all based on their participation in whichever way they chose to participate. So the student is still participating, albeit whether in person or remote. Now, if a remote kid misses 2 or more hours, it's marked. Our middle school, high school kids, every day they're marked every hour.
If that's the case, why did you all choose as our gating metric absences as compared to incidences or percentage of increase, the 2-week?
Well, we have to remember that it was August and we'd never done it before.
Say that again.
It was in August and we have learned so much since then.
So have you changed your mind?
I think it's something that we need to look at, but I don't think it's the only thing. And I think when we look at absences, we want to look at that average daily attendance, and we want to keep that separate from those kids that are still participating, just participating remotely.
Okay, so I told you earlier, when I went on to the state site, I could not figure out what the absences were for Labette County, let alone Parsons School District, because the site's all screwed up. So I'm not getting the information that I need as a school board member. And that's disturbing. On the other hand, did you get the information in regard to the other 2 gating criteria today?
Because they've added additional gating criteria?
672 positive cases right now in Labette County, and we're spiking up. So,
As a county.
Okay.
And so I think part of that gating criteria, the KDH&E, that's the website is what you're talking about, right? The student absenteeism. So what we found was KDH&E requested that all superintendents at the beginning of the year fill that out each week. And there were a list of questions. And they wanted to know how many staff were absent for COVID-related reasons, how many staff were absent otherwise, how many students for COVID, and how many not. There were a number of questions. And so we did that in the beginning. And then what happened is the questions changed. And then they didn't want to know how many were absent for COVID or other, just how many were absent altogether. Both of those things. And no one could explain, and no one from KSDE understood why that change had been made. And then what was happening is the data wasn't clean because we weren't comparing the same things. And so superintendents stopped filling out that report. There were some that did. So we had a quarterly report, which we turned into KSDE. And so they have that with all the weekly attendance for remote and all of those different things. So at my last superintendent's meeting, I asked, we visited, no one had put in anything for the Labette County attendance, absenteeism, but there's still numbers there. And I don't know where those numbers are coming from. I have those numbers. I'd be happy to provide those each week to you. I can, let you know, here's how many are quarantined. Here's the number of, average daily attendance, those kinds of things. But our numbers right now, really, they look pretty good considering where we are.
the State Department of Health puts out those numbers every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12:30. And I go on there to look to see what's going on. Labette Health supposedly supposed to do the same thing, but I don't always find those numbers. So what you're saying is that you compile those numbers, therefore, would you not send them out to the board so we can see what those numbers are, so we can make some decisions? Because closing a school down, a school district down, is not an easy decision to make, but some school districts are making that decision based on the information they get from the superintendent as well as the health department.
And I think we have to remember that the health department's really working hard and they're really, really, really busy. And there are very few, so sometimes they may not get out all the numbers where others do. And I can't give you the entire county's numbers, but I can surely share ours, which I've tried to do. I feel like our numbers right now, I think we need to stay in school as long as we can. I think that's important. Being in the classroom with the teacher is the best way to learn. And we do know that. And that's what's best for our students. And so.
Mr. President, I'd like to say a few things if I could.
You're on.
Okay. So I want to try to simplify this because I think we are maybe getting confused on the gating criteria. And so we chose as a board, my recollection, through Dr. Culver and Ms. Ray, to use an absentee rate gating criteria, because when we, as a board, met early on in the school year, especially when these new gating criteria from the state came and they were handed down, we were kind of struck by those, because at that time we were in the orange and the red zone, and some of them were in the green, but we were in the orange and the red zone on some of those. And so we looked for Dr. Culver's assistance, and she said, what really should be bothersome is your absentee rate. Now, let's not confuse the gating criteria with instructional issues. The gating criteria are health-related issues. They're health issues, not instructional-related issues, in the sense that if I have 50% of my students out because they have COVID, or they have, or they're on quarantine because they've been exposed to COVID, that's a health issue. It may not be an instructional issue because this board was proactive in getting devices in all the students' hands. So those are two different issues. We've got absentee from instruction and absentee from the classroom. Absentee from instruction is an instructional issue. absentee from the classroom is a health issue, especially if it's COVID related. So my interpretation, and I can stand corrected because I have no medical doctorate, of course, is when we look at that absentee rate in the classroom as a gating criteria, we're being reactive to get a sense for the exposure of our staff and our students at the school level. And that's what we chose. And so what I heard earlier today was that our traditional attendance rate was 94%. And so the criteria that we adopted for gating was, it's all in, it's in that gating criteria that the state handed down. And the one we adopted, we ignored the rest of them for a variety of reasons, and primarily because Dr. Culver suggested we focus on the student absentee based on a building level. And so if we have any building level that has an absentee rate that exceeds 10% above what a normal is, so for example, if our normal is 94% in a building and our absentee rate is 10% less than that, or, so we're at 84, then we're in the red. If it's between 6 and 9.9, we're in the orange. And so we as a board can say, you know what? Times have changed and we don't need to consider ourselves in the red and go total remote learning in the high school. Because what Mr. Swanson said was, we're at 81%, all people out. That's the health issue. Not the instruction issue, that's the health issue. He said 81%. That's my recollection.
81%?
From what I heard earlier today. 81%
Student
attendance, so we had 19% out.
Oh, okay.
And if I'm wrong, then please correct me, but we as a board can change this, but let's not act like this is not happening. The reality is we do have a lot of COVID exposure. We do have a much smaller number of COVID positives, but our criteria was not COVID positives, it was absentee rate. And so we need to be clear on that.
Right.
And so that's what I wanted to bring to the table. It's really that simple in my eyes. We've got a health and an instruction issue, and we have absenteeism due to COVID that's excessive. I think we would all agree to that. So what are we gonna do with that?
Jeff, if I could interrupt you, Mr. Swanson is here.
Yeah, that number was the 44 on quarantine plus the 30-some that were out today, and that gave us that absentee rate.
Of
or that
14%.
81% for today. Now, we do expect to get some of those quarantine kids back in the next couple days, and that number is gonna fall on quarantine, but we could have more tomorrow.
So today we were at 80.
We just don't know.
So we were at 86% of attendance, average daily attendance at the high school today.
We were 81. We had 19% of our student body that were not there due to either being out sick, or we just have some unexcused once in a while. We got kids we're chasing down, and then the quarantine.
Oh, because I ran my numbers at a different time.
Yeah.
So.
So that's my point. We always are gonna have people out for a variety of health issues, and we're gonna have people that are unexcused. But the intent of the gating criteria we chosen was, are we 10% more than all the other factors? And at the high school, for example, the numbers that I heard, we are. What we choose to do with that is another thing. I have not adopted or proposed any plan, that's not my job. But we just need to recognize that's where we're at. And what do we do with that information? That's the criteria we chose. And we have some other things we can look at. We've learned a lot, as Ms. Ray said, since August. But that's what we as a board chose. And as a board member, I have to evaluate what our policy we chose versus the reality today and make decisions upon that. If we choose to change our policy, then we can do that upon recommendation from the superintendent or a health officer and so forth. But that's where I'm at. And I just wanted to clarify that because I think it's important.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, I think the clarification, we do need that. And if our focus be on absenteeism, how did you say it, Jeff? Okay, we don't have that many kids out with COVID, but we do have a certain percentage out
With COVID exposure.
with COVID exposure. If we get a lot more kids out with COVID, I think we just have to, you know,
And really my recommendation would be, at the beginning, we started and it was about attendance. And I think that's part of it. I think we need to look at some other things additionally moving forward, just because we have learned a number of things since we've started. I think the positivity rate, students and staff, is something to consider. The transmission rate in school, which right now is 0. We don't have any, in addition to the attendance.
We talked briefly, one meeting in the morning, of maybe during the Thanksgiving break. Has any thought been talked about that more, where the elementary would go and the high school would be out a couple days, or is that not?
I don't know if they're still out there. We had talked about that at an administrator meeting, possibly having the 2 days next week before Thanksgiving. Sorry, I ate a piece of ice. The 2 days before Thanksgiving where middle school and high school students went remote. So then they would have 10 consecutive days at home. The more we looked at it, thought about it, when you look at our calendar, where the numbers have really popped, you had Halloween, a break, and then boom. And so taking 2 days before Thanksgiving, we kind of felt like
Would give us a week break,
It'd
would
give
be
us-
more.
It would give us a week break, which would be more, but then the reality is we're gonna come back after Thanksgiving, and it's probably gonna be a little lower that first week, and then I would suspect that the next week, those numbers will pop back up. In December, we only have 14 days where students are in class.
And we need them to be there for finals, at least high school.
Right. We need for kids to be, I
Anywhere,
think,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
in school. But
that's
yes,
just fine.
We
I
had
didn't know
talked,
what-
we had talked about that.
what went.
That is
Yeah,
something that
that's
we
fine.
talked
And
about.
finals are actually after we come back.
They are, you're gonna
Yes.
move them.
Well, the
That's
the
good.
semester ends on
January
January 15th because we
That's-
started late.
That's right.
That gives us 1 week of getting back into the swing of things and then 1 week for our finals.
Like it used to be, in the old days.
Yes.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember that.
Yeah, say
I think
yes.
that's a good idea.
So, and we did talk about that. And the number for last week, the percentage, if you look at the absenteeism all, and you count those quarantines, so if today it was 19, I mean, that number is higher than, that's the highest number that we've had so far. So, last week for the high school, the average, now, this was just for quarantine, was 7%. And then I'd have to figure the students. And I
So
pulled
what's
that
the
by day.
possibility of extending the Thanksgiving break?
And that's always something that the board could elect to do. It just means we're gonna have to make up that time on the back end or somewhere.
Maybe, maybe not.
And that's true too. KSDE is really looking at that 1,116 hours. I don't think they're going to just give us a blanket waiver that we have, to fill out.
Well,
And
if Coffeyville's closing at Thanksgiving and not going back to January 5th, how are they gonna make up all that time?
it's my understanding they're going remote
That's
during
what I've
that
heard.
time.
They're going to be remote.
So it will count towards their academic attendance,
Okay.
the instructional
So
attendance.
what's the possibility of going remote for a week after Thanksgiving to see what happened? Every time I leave core from swimming at 2:00, that fever clinic is lined up with cars now. It wasn't that way 2 weeks ago. It's lined up with cars, and the numbers are increasing significantly. And, hopefully we can have our basketball and wrestling, and hopefully we can have kids in school. As a teacher, I want kids in school, but I don't want to sugarcoat this. We're looking at some serious stuff with Thanksgiving coming up. As an administrator, I wouldn't want my kids to be remote, but it's a possibility
And you said a week after Thanksgiving. Well, and looking at that, you really, with that logic, you should probably go two.
Two, because
of
two's
the 2
when it's
weeks.
gonna pop.
And then we only have 4 more days after that.
Right.
So I think it's either we don't come back after Thanksgiving and do everything remote, or we just stay in person. Does that make sense, Lou?
Yeah.
That it
Yeah.
And
just
I
needs to
would-
extend a little bit?
Yeah.
Right, and I don't know
Well,
that
those
that
are
would.
good options.
Right, and we talked about those as an admin team, and I don't know that that needs to be pre-K-12, because we know that little ones, that they really, really struggle to remote, and then people have to find someone to watch them so that they can still work, which has been, that's a reason some of our staff have been off, and we've had to find coverage because their daycare is closed for COVID-related reasons. And so I think asking elementary folks and parents to remote, at this point, when district-wide, out of 605 elementary students, we had 43 last week that were home on quarantine, but we had 1 positive student.
Well, I would
Out
leave
of all
that option
elementary.
up to the elementary schools, but middle school and high school, I would consider doing the remote for that, what'd you say, 2 weeks after?
It ends up 14 days.
Right, it would be
Yeah.
December the 1st.
So that would let us know what's happening with the transmission, or not transmission, with the infections and with the number of cases. And
And to play devil's advocate, okay, I'm not advocating for remote, okay? I'm not standing here advocating for remote. But
Neither am I.
then we go Christmas,
Yeah, we got 2 more.
New Year's, and 2 more weeks after that, and now we've hit the end of the semester. We've hit that January 15th spot. Every time, 4th of July, Labor Day, and for some weird reason, Halloween, we've had these.
it's an administrator's nightmare. I understand.
Absolutely.
And that's
Remote
why,
learning-
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what, when we talked about it, we agreed we want for our kids to stay in school as long as we can. Because I think there will come a time, because we've talked about it from the beginning, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. There will come a time that probably we do have to go remote. But I feel like based on these numbers that we have right now, now is not the time.
We're not too bad. And Lou, definitely, I understand, but I had a CTE teacher call me today and said, if we do go remote, I hope that I'll still be able to see some of my students. Because you understand, some of those hands-on classes, it's either going to be busy work or nothing.
Right.
My son was in one of his classes last year, welding, and what are you going to do when they cut it, learn nothing? But I see your point. I see your point.
Well, my concern is losing certified staff to COVID or being quarantined, as well as losing support staff, especially the paras, which is a big beef of mine right now, because they do such a good job, and Tri-County needs to step up, and you said you were gonna talk to them.
Joanne, I tell you, you and I will just go do that, right?
And that, there are board members in Olathe that are volunteering, that are coming in and subbing because they can't get paid. So someone brought that, someone.
But now
that to me
Tri-County could pay, we get paid for
Tri-County
Tri-County.
can pay you. Tri-County can pay you. You might be on it. You might be on the side.
Dave
I'm not
was
sure.
over here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's in their budget. And that would be another thing with, paras and
But again, I
sub-paras, the
think the
budget.
really, really hard thing would be to find people to do it, because we're having a hard enough time finding stuff, I think if they were out there,
I think so.
Well, I just hope everything holds.
Yeah.
If we can just hold
Yeah.
through the first 2 days of before Thanksgiving, we can kind of see, and I understand, Luke, I understand, but I've got 5 grandkids at PHS, and I know what they're going through,
I'm not suggesting that we close, I'm suggesting that we have a plan B and C, so that if the numbers do spike, and like Jeff said, we've got some health issues that we need to address, and so are we gonna just talk about attendance? We need to make some decisions, and Jeff made it very clear, we need to look at what gating criteria, plural, are we gonna use? Not just
Right, and that was,
attendance.
and I think part of that, my recommendation would be that we look at the positivity rate for students of COVID. We look at the transmission rate, if they're getting it in school, if it's we're looking at the staff, and teacher positivity. I think those are the things we need to look at in addition to.
And like
that
Jeff said, you need that
attendance.
chart with the green zone, the orange zone, and red zone, so it's perfectly clear to us as well as our patrons as to why we made these decisions based on those 2 or 3 criteria.
Right, and I
Which
think-
makes a lot more, I think it makes a lot more sense,
Yeah,
maybe
and
not.
spread among students is not in the gating criteria. But
No,
to me, that's a
it is
huge
not.
piece. We have had 0 kids contracted here at school
In
because
any
we
of our
are
schools.
masked and we are social distancing and we feel like it's a safe place. I think school is probably the safest place for kids to be because we're taking these precautions.
Right.
But at the time, when and if it does start to transmit in school, I don't know what that will
Well,
look
that- I
like.
mean, that's a
We've done a great job
conversation.
so far.
Yeah,
All the schools
you
have.
have.
And I think that's just it. I don't believe that there's a set number that we can say, if this happens, we do this. And I think there's so many fluid and moving pieces and parts.
But
I
we've got to
think-
have staff.
Right, we have to have staff. We've got to have, if it gets to a point where, like now we have a number of staff that are out because their daycare's closed. So they aren't sick, they aren't home, but they don't have any daycare. Those kinds of things, if we can't cover the classrooms, then, that's another piece, I think, that we need to look at. But I think right now, we have 7 out of 1,306 kids, like 0.5% of our positivity rate in our students. That's a good number. That's,
I think we need to consider, number one, staffing. Staffing is critical. If we can't staff, we
Can't
can't,
go to
we can't do. And then I think we need to look at the positivity, the number of students we have, the percentage of students we have who are actually COVID infected, a positive test. And if that number gets, and I don't know a number, I'll reach up in the sky and pull down a number if we wish, 10%.
Well, the gating criteria is already figured out for us.
but the.
But we can change that.
Well, I understand.
That's what I'm talking,
Well,
so then we say that 10% of the student body is positive. I'm not just using a number, it can be any number we want, is positive, then we shut her down. Or we look at X percentage of students who are quarantined. So, the attendance thing, and I think is important that we remember that those kids who are quarantined should be still learning. They still should be online, unless they're really sick, they should be online every hour getting their education. Just like they're at school and they're not counted as absent. I think that's critical, they're not counted as absent. They're there, they're learning, their education is ongoing. So I think we have to keep that in mind, that these kids, these students are there. And I think our numbers, as far as closing down, I think elementary needs to stay open even longer. Goodness gracious, those little kids, particularly at the Lincoln kids, they're squirmers anyhow, and you put them at home in front of a computer and they're gonna be really squirmers. So let's keep those kids in school as long as we can. I think our high school and middle school kids need to be in school absolutely as long as they can. That's the best learning environment, that's the most emotional for them, it's mentally the best for them, it's physically the best for them. That's where they need to be as long as we can keep them there. And I know somewhere along the line, we're going to have to pull the plug and say we're going to go remote. As Lori said, it's not if, it's when.
well, I'd like to see your suggested new criteria.
Okay, and so
You was-
I didn't attach hard numbers to the staffing, the student positivity rate, the staff positivity rate, or the student spread. I hadn't attached hard and fast numbers to that. Those were just the things that I wanted for us to talk about this evening and to consider in addition to the absenteeism rate. So I'm open to, if you've got suggestions for those things,
How many staff members do we have out because of children having no daycare? Roughly, just rough. 5, 6?
I would say probably. And the thing is, we have the app that does all the certified, and then we have classified as well. So today when I went out, we counted, there are 25 staff district-wide on quarantine. 25. And out of those, and I included Tri-County in folks in that number. And 6 out of the 25 have of those were COVID positive.
Okay.
Now, one of them comes off quarantine tomorrow, so then there'll just be 5.
How many of those can you tell us were Tri-County?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 of the 7.
5, well, there were 6 to start, and 5 out of the 6 are Tri-County. And so tomorrow, there will only be 5, and then it'll be 4 out of the 5 are Tri-County, which really doesn't matter. But that percentage rate is 1.6%.
Okay, but
And we have-
I guess I didn't, how many staff members are out, teachers are out because their children roughly are sick or
Or they
can't
just
find
have to stay home
daycare?
with them, yeah, just have.
Can't find daycare or
We
something
don't
like
have-
that.
Is there 3? I
3 at the
think?
high school.
3 at the
I
high
think
school?
But then there's one, well,
Well, is there one at Garfield?
oh, I gotta show
I
my
mean, there's
face
going to
for
be,
this to work.
well, we've got more than 1 or 2.
Yes, we do.
Well, we have 3 at the high school that are.
Well,
out
to me,
tested.
if we're going to do something, can we get some kind of a daycare somewhere where we can, for staff members? To me, I'd rather do something for our staff.
Well,
I mean,
problem is that their kids are quarantined and they can't
Because-
leave.
oh, they're all quarantined. They're
The
not
kids-
just because
Their
of,
kids
The
are.
kids are
because they were
quarantined at this point in
Because
time.
they were exposed at daycare.
okay, excuse me, okay.
So,
I misread that.
and- So,
Okay.
and now there were some that, I mean, they're closed because their daycare's closed, but the daycare's closed because somebody was a positive, so.
Okay.
So Lori, when the teachers are quarantined like that, are they still running their classrooms?
Yes.
I mean, they're still teaching their
So
classrooms?
now, the 3 that we had out for daycare purposes have not done that. So we have another teacher that's on quarantine, and yes, we were at the middle school today, she logs on, teaches the class. And so the students are right there, they see the teacher, they're having the same instruction. They're doing that at the elementary level as well. Some of those classes it'll work for, and then others it won't.
Yeah.
Kindergarten, not so much. But we've done 3rd grade that way, we've done middle school math, we're doing middle school communications. So, yes.
And then we have to have somebody watching that class.
See, that's just it. And so I'm hoping that KSD would give a little leeway, because if it didn't have to be a highly qualified, certified person in there, we have interventionists that are very qualified and very, very capable. But that's kind of where the rub comes, because you've got to have 2. But whenever it's been possible, the teachers have remote taught from home. So they're logging in every day and teaching the class, just like they were there.
Jeff, you up?
Yeah, I want to make some final comments, and there's no disrespect intended here. Mrs. Ray is not a medical professional,
Correct.
and we have relied upon Dr. Culver when we set the absentee gating criteria, and we allowed her to kind of send us in that direction when we had a bunch of other gating criteria. It is really, really simple. We have exponential growth of this virus going on in our community right now, just like every community across the nation does. And for us to ask Ms. Ray to develop ad hoc gating criteria is the wrong thing to do. Number one, it puts a lot on her. And number 2, she's the
I'm
wrong
not a doctor.
person you need to put it on, quite frankly, in my opinion.
I would agree.
And so her objective is to, is instruction related. And I agree with that. And I understand and I agree with everything about the best place for a student to learn is in the classroom. Our dilemma is when we have students walking into classrooms with substitutes and they see 4 peers instead of 16 peers because the rest of them are quarantined, we have to recognize we have a problem. And it's not all over the district yet, but potentially it could be very soon. And so I think as a board, we need to keep our eyes on this, and I think it's common sense. We as a board know today that things are much, much worse than they were in August when we were discussing this previously. And had we been discussing some of the numbers in August that we're discussing today, we would have probably been a little more scared. The medical professionals came and talked to us at our board meeting and warned us this was going to happen. in the community potentially and so forth. And so it's happening. So I would encourage us to have more frequent board meetings, special meetings to talk about this. And, you know, I don't have the right, I don't have all the answers. I don't have the answers because once again, I'm not a medical professional. But we have exponential growth and we need, it's going to change tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So for us to sit here and say, now we're going to close school next week or tomorrow or whatever, it's going to get worse every day, I would suspect, before it gets better. So we've got exponential growth. It's that simple. It's not turning around anytime soon. And our Thanksgiving break will clearly impact that. It's not going to get better. So we need to be cognizant of that. And I don't, for us to make ad hoc gating criteria, I'm not in support of that personally, but I'm just one vote, so.
And what I'd like to
Well,
do.
hold on, it wasn't meant to be ad hoc, Jeff, but let me clarify what I was trying to say. I'm looking at the state site right now, trend in incident rate, 2-week % positive case rate, student absenteeism. I can't get the information that I would want as a board member to see what's going on based on the information that Lori gets from the medical professionals. But I remember Dr. Hetlinger and Dr. Legler saying they were looking more at the 2-week % positive case rate. If it gets above 10%, then we've got some serious issues that need to be addressed immediately. So no, I'm sticking with the criteria that's already set up. I would just like the information from whomever Lori talks to, not asking her to ad hoc make up some new stuff.
We're failing that criteria though, Lou. We're not talking about that in this board meeting, but at the county level, we're failing that criteria. Our 2-week positive rate exceeds that 10%. The medical professionals wanted it to be below 5. We're above 10. We had a week period where it was 16. And so we're failing those criteria. We chose a criteria at the board level as recommended by Dr. Culver that was absenteeism. The statistic we heard tonight at the high schools, we're failing that one as well. And so maybe those criteria aren't right now that we're additional 3 months into this. Right. I'm not blaming anyone. It's just, are we changing the criteria? Who are we going to change them as a result of? I'm saying it's wrong to charge Lori with these criteria and hold her accountable. We as a board need to step up and make some right decisions here pretty damn quick. Otherwise, we're going to be the ones held accountable.
Mm-hmm. And so,
I don't disagree.
I agree.
And so maybe it would be a good idea if we had 2 board members that were willing to be on a team with myself and probably a couple other administrators, in addition to someone from the health department, that we could have a meeting, a weekly update, something by phone, something by Zoom, and then I can share the information each week.
Well, that would certainly give us a stronger voice than what we've had. So there's no board member that's on the health department committee?
The health department only has 4 employees.
The meetings that you go to with Dr. Culver, is there a board member that attends?
No, and
so you're suggesting?
So what I'm suggesting is that we form our own. And so that we have a couple board members, myself, and then we make an appointment with Dr. Culver. We met with her one time, the very beginning when all this started, and I speak weekly, sometimes daily, multiple times a week, to Lisa Hoppick. But we have to understand that they're right in the middle of all of this, and so asking them for additional time wouldn't be easy, but the county superintendents could do that, and Linda and I went and did that one time. We could add a person to do that, if that was something that the group wanted.
And I think Jeff's right. We're going to need to know that we're going to have special meetings. And
right.
Because it's going to change, and we either have special meetings or we task Lori and Linda with deciding that we're going to shut her down. And I don't think that they want that.
Well, and that's information, just like Jeff said, I'm not a medical doctor, and so that's information, that medical information would be what we would need to glean and learn from the health department.
Yeah.
These were just things that I thought, because I looked at the uptick and thought, okay, it's coming.
So how often is this Excel file updated?
Okay, so the first one with the quarantine is every week.
Once a week?
And so we do it, yeah.
Could that be added into the view?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That was the purpose of our question, when I questioned you on numbers, because I just, every day we get a heads up, and I have to look at the top and see if it's that day or what day it was, what
Right.
time of day. You're getting 2 and 3 a day now, so
Yeah, and so
I
this
need
is.
totals. I
Yeah,
don't need.
I can give you this every week. So it's just figured each week. And it just tells you, and now the tricky part is the enrollment changes, which then, so if you're a math person.
So is our plan, or is your recommendation right now, Lori, that we stay the course?
My recommendation right now is that we stay the course. And moving forward, we look at student positivity rate, student spread, staffing concerns, in addition to attendance,
Attendance meaning absentee rate?
absenteeism.
Total absentee rate.
Total
And we're not considering those who are remote learning as
No.
Right,
absent.
those are excluded, as long as they're present and attending
Make it
class,
clear.
whether they're in person or remote, they're present.
Because I look at it instructionally, health-wise, it would include all of those.
Right.
Okay.
So, I don't know that it needs a motion of any sort. That was just what I wanted
So,
moving forward.
any other comments or questions or concerns? We need a motion to do something, and the recommendation is to stay the course.
Right now,
If we're gonna stay the course, we're doing what we're doing, right?
that is
Why
correct.
do we need the motion? Or do
Yeah.
we?
Because it's on the
Well, I think we
agenda.
need to because of what we said about the absenteeism, right?
I know, and when I talked to Luke Silva today at KSB, he said, you don't have to put action, and even if you do, you don't have to take action. And so I probably should have worded it just as a discussion,
Okay.
because then when it looked like an action, it looked like we had to take an action.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so we do not need a motion, we could just move forward, if that is,
If you need anybody, I mean, like, I would volunteer.
would you like to do that? Okay.
And I would hope if somebody else could too, I think it'd be good to have 2, maybe 3, if we could.
I'll do it if nobody else wants to, but I'm sure that anybody else have it that
You
wants
don't
it.
have time. Anybody else want to?
Lou, why don't you? You're in the medical field.
All right, Dr. Luke, Sean Hill.
What's the request? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to visit with the health department and submit, and try to schedule a meeting of some sort where a couple of our board members could attend with a representative from the health department so that we could discuss these things. It may have to be countywide because they are very busy, and I'm sure the gentlemen in the other counties are looking at something like this as well, moving
Okay.
forward.
Jeff, do you want to do that?
You gonna do it?
Yeah, I'll volunteer to that. I mean,
That'd be good.
I'll volunteer for that. My schedule's pretty busy, but I'm assuming if I can participate via Zoom.
I would think so.
Okay.
And I have
So-
no idea how long it'll take before we can get on someone's calendar either, so.
Okay, I understand that. So my only reluctance, I don't know that we need to take action, but my only reluctance with what we're doing tonight is, my recollection is, the last formal action we took, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it wasn't formal action, was to adopt a attendance or an absentee rate gating criteria.
Okay.
And if we are failing that gating criteria as a board, I feel like, and if we did take action, and I haven't looked back at the minutes, if we took action to adopt that and we're failing that and we're not taking action to,
I see what you're saying.
we look at that and say, hey, that doesn't matter anymore. That's
Well, it
my
does.
only concern with what we've got going on right now.
And and I can understand that, and to be honest, I didn't look back through agendas to see if that was something that was voted on, or not. We could always take action to include these other considerations, if that would make the board feel better. I
don't have any medical, I guess we have gating criteria that came down from above. I don't know where your proposed gating criteria, the new ones came from. And what the hurdles would be and how they were developed. And so I would need to know that before I said, yeah, we want to adopt that.
Right. And these were things in our KSDE Thursday meetings. They've been including people from KDH&E and from the Kansas Works, which is our pediatricians. And these are topics that in the last 2 or 3 weeks, those folks have brought up as things to look at, things to consider, but they don't have a specific document typed up and ready or any criteria. It's just been things that during our last 2 or 3 weeks have come up with KSDE, KDH&E, and as well as the Kansas Works pediatrician group. So
Okay, right.
these were kind of the highlights.
So Jeff, would you be okay moving forward without any special action, or do you think we need to take action?
No, I don't think we need to take action, but I sure would like to know, because I think we discussed this at great length before we started the school year. And if we actually took action on this was our gating criteria, and this was what we were gonna look at. Because if we did, and we have buildings that don't meet that gating criteria, I think we need to discuss that soon and determine what we're gonna do as a result of that.
And I can go back, probably not this evening, but tomorrow, and review past board meetings to see specifically what was done, and if that action was taken, then I will let everyone know and we can schedule another board meeting.
That was probably a special meeting late in August, I'm guessing.
Right.
We had one where we decided to adopt this for Lori and Dr. Culver's recommendation, and I think we adopted it with action, but I could be wrong, and that's my only issue.
Well, and I can go back and look and let you all know, okay? And then if we did, we'll probably need to have a meeting.
Well, we would need to know what our absentee
Right.
rate is as defined from a health standard, not an instruction
Not an
standard, which how many people we have out of the building,
Right,
students.
because that is different.
That's the issue.
Yep.
Can we know that weekly? Maybe in the view?
Yes.
Can we get numbers in the view every week?
Yes, we sure can. And so what it'll be is it'll be like on the back page, back here, where it'll be divided up by building, that second page, where it talks about how many are quarantined and then how many other absent. Now, in this one, I hadn't done the extra column to put the percentage, simply because we'd done it on the first, because this is what KSDE requested when we did our quarterly report. But yeah,
Would it be possible to look at 2019 numbers, absentee rate numbers, and include that? I mean, I really don't want to burden any more of our
well, and
staff or whatever, but if this number is relatively available, it would be beneficial to
This-
know our absentee rate for last year.
right. And so our average daily attendance, it depends on the building, but it was somewhere between 93, 94, 95% was the ADA, or the average daily attendance last year.
Okay. And so as long as we know that benchmark, we can compare that to
Right.
our absentee rate.
And part of it too is, then we got out of school in March, and and then there was the big, do you count those days? Do you not count those, that kind of thing.
Anything
But that was
else?
Yeah, I want to ask Jeff a question. Hey, Jeff, so going back to that meeting where we talked about the absentee rate, and now we're saying we're in the red zone. Do you recall what our action was going to be? Where we're going to close the school, or we're going to go remote? Is that what you're saying you forgot? Because I don't remember myself.
No, my recollection is, I think we took action that was the gating criteria we were gonna use.
Yeah.
And then we were gonna revisit it. I thought we had even followed that gating criteria and avoid all the others, and not necessarily ignore all the others, but that's the one we were gonna focus on. And so I felt like we were gonna have a board meeting to discuss it when we reached that hurdle. In other words, we were
And then
failing
decide
that
what we're
gating
gonna do.
criteria on one building or another.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right about that.
I don't think it was going to be an automatic if we hit that number, but it was going to be a board meeting then to make a decision.
That's what we decided we'd meet every 2 weeks. And we'd look at the statistics every 2 weeks and then make a decision as what to do.
Right,
So
right.
that's basically what you're saying, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I believe so. I thought we were gonna look at it every 2
Yeah, I
weeks
recall now,
and revisit it, was my recollection as well.
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else on that item?
So we're gonna call it a special meeting after you guys meet with Culver and whoever?
Right. I will call and see when we can get on their calendar.
Okay.
And that's going to be Joanne and Jeff. And then Jeff, if you can't make
I'll be a
sometime,
substitute.
you'll be an alternate?
I'll be a substitute.
Okay. Lou will be a substitute if somebody can't make it. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
We're ready for 9.5, an executive session. how much time do you need?
And I don't actually need,
Okay,
I don't,
how about,
I don't think we need.
15 minutes, that work? I think we can do it in 15.
Can we take a break?
Yes, before we do that, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. We'll come back here at 8:25, once we have the motion to go into
8?
executive session. Yeah, that clock is in our
Oh,
area.
I thought, man, I've been in here a long time.
I did too. I thought,
Yeah,
whoa.
that clock is in our head.
I'm ready to go home.
Okay,
The rest of
we have a motion by anyone to go into executive session for 15 minutes, talk about non-elected personnel.
So moved.
Motion by David. Second by Olivia, go into executive session for 15 minutes, starting at 8:25. Come back in session at 8:35 with the board present to begin with.
8-4. 8-4.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Say opposed, same sign, 0, carries 7-0. You don't need to turn your
Yeah, he said we
microphone.
don't-
A little warmer.
Okay, we're back in session. Action item 9.6 is action on the superintendent's contract for the 21-22 school year. We have a motion to act on her contract.
I move that we extend Lori Ray's contract for the 2021-22 school year.
Second.
Motion by Joanne, second by David, to extend Ms. Ray's contract for an additional year with salary to be determined later. Would that be,
Yes.
okay? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0. 9.7 is action on personnel. We have several different areas here, so let's start here with the recommendation for employment.
Okay, so this is where the change is. Cato Bar Miller, instead of being the middle school assistant wrestling coach, will be the high school assistant wrestling coach for, right?
Both, but then middle school, I guess, isn't having their wrestling.
Upstairs is just a month long.
It
So
is.
theirs will be over
So,
next
okay,
week.
so
And I think it ended maybe today because they only have 2
Right.
kids.
okay, so he's already done middle school and now he's going to do high school. Okay, got it.
Okay.
All right, so thank you for clarifying. So he'll be on there for both. So I've got Cato Bar Miller, middle school assistant wrestling coach, effective the 2021 season. Jessica Ward, bus monitor, effective November the 9th, 2020. Brittany Odom, high school girls assistant basketball coach, effective the 2021 season. Cato Bar Miller, high school assistant wrestling coach, effective the 2021 season. And Ryan Willis, middle school boys assistant basketball coach, effective the 2021 season. I'd recommend that you approve these for employment.
So moved.
Motion by David. Roger, is that Roger? Did you? Lou? Okay, thank you. Second by Lou. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That carries 7-0. Recognitions.
Okay, we've got 2 resignations for employment. Tyler Beardmore, high school girls head tennis coach, effective October the 19th, 2020. And Jeff Scheibe, middle school boys assistant basketball coach, effective October the 28th, 2020.
So moved.
Motion by David. Second by Lou. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0.
We had 1 termination from employment. Ashley Hardwick, bus monitor, effective November the 5th, 2020.
So moved.
Motion by David.
Second.
Second by Olivia. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. And the final one, sadly.
There's not going to be any tears.
Yeah.
No tears. No tears. And this she's going to re-retire. So we have 1 resignation for retirement. Linda Prell, Assistant Superintendent, effective June the 30th, 2021.
Begrudgingly, yes.
Yeah. She's going to have fun in retirement. And this time she's going to retire for real.
It has been a wonderful, I can't tell you enough how I have so enjoyed these last 4 years.
It's been,
It's great.
yeah.
But it's trying, so.
Okay, we do need a motion to
It's
accept.
time. Yeah, I know the feeling. Hate
So
to see
moved.
that.
Motion by David, second by Joanne to accept Linda Perrell's resignation effective June 30th with our heartfelt thanks for
Yes.
all the years you've provided for us.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And
Any
I'll
others?
work till the end.
She will. She will, no doubt.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye, aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries 7-0. Nothing else on the agenda. This meeting is adjourned at 8:44.
Yeah, we've got to fix that.